Hi, I'm here at the incredible NSU Art Museum with Director and Chief Curator Bonnie Clearwater. Bonnie, thank you so much for having us today.
Well, thank you for being here.
So Bonnie, can you tell us, for those who don't know what your role is at the museum, can you explain what curator does here?
Well, I'm the director and the chief curator, which means I'm responsible for running the place, the administration, but also the part about why we run this museum, which is the exhibitions and programs. So a curator, I'm an art historian, and I have a long history of organizing exhibitions of up-and-coming artists as well as well-known artists and historical surveys. And I bring that vision to NSU Art Museum.
Wow, it's incredible. And talking about your history, I know prior to being at NSU, you were the director and chief curator for the Museum of Contemporary Art in Miami. How was your experience there?
Well, you know, when I came to Miami in 1990 with my husband, we started an art book publishing company.
Oh, wow.
And everyone thought we were crazy. We had left New York, we left LA, and we decided to open up an art book publishing company in Miami Beach. We were actually brought in to help make an art scene in 1990, and I think we did a pretty good job. We became catalysts because we knew people all through the art world, and there was a really thriving scene here already. It just needed the attention. And after a few years, there was they were building the Museum of Contemporary Art, and they came after me to be the curator and then ultimately the director. It opened in '96, and it was a great time to be in Miami as the art world began to really flourish and become international, especially with the arrival of the major art fair, Art Basel,
of course.
Miami Beach.
Yes, of course. We all know Art Basel, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. So I actually grew up in Fort Lauderdale. Yeah. The NSU Museum has been a staple, I've known it, but I've noticed changes, the rebranding, so to say. Right. Can you just touch up on the rebranding efforts and the outreach that you're doing internationally and locally?
Yeah. Well, the rebranding came out of necessity. First of all, the museum merged with Nova Southeastern University in 2008. So we're celebrating 10 years of being part of NSU as well as 60 years of the founding of the museum. I was actually here when this building opened in 1986. Wow. And it was a big deal. It was really the beacon for all of South Florida culture. But then a lot of competition started happening in Miami and Palm Beach, and in a way we became the middle child. Yes. Now there was, just like I was encouraged to come to Miami to help make an art scene, I was encouraged to come to Fort Lauderdale to help be a catalyst. Again, things were already happening here. I knew there were some wonderful collectors here. More have arrived since.
Yes.
And there's a great artist community and other cultural institutions. It was a matter of really putting the spotlight on this city and taking a point of view that this museum could be international as well as serving a regional need. I looked at how do you really create an identity for the museum. You know, it's been around, it's done great shows, but it didn't really have a very clear identity. What is this museum? Right. Well, one of the unique things about this museum is its collections. It has very strong, very unique collections. And so we determined that we could use those collections as a way of defining what kind of exhibitions we were doing. Right. So, for instance, we have the largest collection of Cobra. Cobra was a very important post-war European avant-garde art museum. For instance, the museum has the largest collection in the United States of the post-war European avant-garde art movement.
I didn't realize that. Wow.
Called Cobra.
Yes.
And this group was particularly addressing and reacting to the trauma of World War II. It was it looked at a complete break with the traditional and academic art and the art of a new world. It took from children's art, art of the tribal arts, and a freedom. They wanted a freedom in their art, and this was a very expressive movement, and we have the largest collection. So what we did was create an exhibition series called the Regeneration Series, and we specifically looked at artists or movements that reacted to World War II and the trauma that was caused by World War II and the Nazi period and the fascist period. So, for instance, the first artist in that series was German artist Anselm Kiefer, and his work specifically deals with the idea of regeneration. He was born at the last month of World War II in Germany, and he was part of the generation that felt the guilt of what had happened with the parents' generation, the grandparents' generation, but nobody talked about it. So his
oppressive
feeling of guilt, the fear that it could come back again. So his work specifically dealt with this idea that out of this destruction comes new creation. So that's launched that program. Last year's Frank Stella exhibition.
Yes.
Now, Frank Stella's work is completely abstract, colorful.
Yes, very vibrant.
And yet it also dealt with the post-war experience. He realized his father had been in the military during World War II for America, and he realized how hard-won freedom was, and he never took it for granted. And therefore, he too appreciated the fact that in his art, he had a semblance of being free, and that this was an important thing to express, because at the same time, in the communist bloc, artists were not free.
Yes.
They had to paint
Constraints.
in the surreal, in the social realist mode. Artists were jailed for painting abstract. So we have to understand the work in the context of the time. So that was another major exhibition, one of the greatest American artists of our time, and it was his most comprehensive exhibition ever. And it's 83.
Wow.
Is 83 years. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. So you talked about some very powerful exhibits. What, and this may be a tough question, but what was the most impactful exhibit that you've experienced here?
Well, for me, all exhibitions are really a continuity of my interests, my thought, my dialogue with my colleagues, discussions with artists. So it's really hard to separate one from another. One of the first exhibitions we did here, another area that we're very strong on is the Latin American modern masters, and particularly the Mexican artists with Diego Rivera, Frida Kahlo, and Leonora Carrington. So we wanted to highlight that not only was it a strong collection, but we had some of the very key pieces by these artists. So I also had access to one of the greatest collections in Mexico of Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera. So I decided to do an exhibition combining our collection, which was more of a survey of that period, along with the Riveras and Frida Kahlos. And it right away established the museum's reputation for having this focus and having such a strong collection that people might not have known before. The other important part of our museum program is engaging community. There was an exhibition that when I was at my previous museum and talking to an artist that I know well, Edward Duval Carré, a Haitian artist in Miami, and he told me a few years ago he was working on an exhibition of the history of Haitian photography. It would be the first show ever to look at the history of Haitian photography.
The first?
The first.
Wow.
And he was doing it for this museum. And I was like, oh, Edward, why didn't you come to me first? I wanted to do that show. Well, as fate would have it, I got to do that show afterwards. And it was a very important exhibition to be able to document the history of Haiti through photography and what
And
it
their
meant.
roots are so strong. I mean, here.
Yeah. So and the relationship of this museum with Edward Duval Carré is also strong because he was the first artist in residence for this museum, and his installation, which is on our ground floor, is one of our permanent works in the collection. Probably the most Instagram piece in the museum. When he was commissioned to do this project, it was an artist in residence, and he was working with the high school students at Dillard High School, which is an arts magnet. And he started off by questioning, well, what does Fort Lauderdale know about Haitian history? And he worked with the children and the community in putting together a mural or installation that would capture and tell part of this history. And it's, again, has become one of the most important parts of our collection.
That's great. Really incorporating children into the arts at an early age is really important.
And that's been another area that we've really focused on, is bringing in children. When I arrived here, the emphasis was on an art school, but what we realized was the arts were not being taught as robustly as they could in the public schools. And we started a program called Museum on the Move, where the museum raises the money to bring in over 4,000 middle school kids a year to have, with free buses, free admission. They come in for tours of the exhibition, but our exhibitions touch on multiple subjects, everything from science to technology to mathematics, as well as art and history. So we're able to use our collection to teach all these different subjects. And
that's great.
They also get to do a hands-on art project that reinforces what they learned.
Oh, that's great.
The other thing that we've done is artists that we've featured in our shows, we invite them to come and talk to students.
Oh, wow, that's exciting.
So a few years ago, we did an exhibition of a young artist from Malawi in Africa, Samson Kambalu, and he's extraordinary. He's actually now an associate professor at Oxford.
Oh, wow.
And he engaged with close to 500 middle school kids and talking about the economics of his tiny country, which is based on gift giving, gift exchange, rather than monetary exchange. And he had these kids thinking about how would you create a gift that couldn't be returned. And they all had to come up with projects. They worked together on this. And one of the
students made them think outside.
And made us think outside. And one kid came up to me and said, "My gift is a handshake, because once you give somebody a handshake, you can't take it back." And I thought that was really thinking outside the box, and this stimulated them. Also, these kids had never met anyone from Africa before.
Wow.
And so that in itself was a thrill for them to have that exchange.
I can imagine. Well, that was amazing hearing about this. Where do you, Bonnie, see the arts and cultural scene in the next, say, 5 years? Because it's growing.
It's growing,
rapidly.
yeah. As I mentioned before, the museum had become sort of the middle child with the booming art scene in Miami and the collectors and museums in Palm Beach. So now, when I left Miami, I reassured everyone I wasn't leaving Miami. Good. But in fact, I was moving the South Florida art scene northward so that it was a continuous art coast with us in the middle, bridging Miami and Palm Beach. And what started out as spin is now the reality. have gone from being the middle child to being the center of attention.
That's a great way to put it.
It's a great
I love that.
In fact, we are partnering with the high-speed train Brightline, which is transforming everything.
I just went on it for the first time.
Isn't it
to
exciting?
Miami with my team. It's beautiful, and you can walk from here.
And you can walk. You know, that's one of the real advantages for Fort Lauderdale. Is it's such a walkable downtown with lots of destinations all clustered together, and we call it doing the district. It's the arts and entertainment district. The Performing Arts Center is in walking distance. The Museum of Art and Discovery is just down the block, and all the restaurants and the river and the Stranahan House and the historic Fort Lauderdale, it's all there. So we are now doing a promotion with Brightline called Meet Us Halfway. It's 30 minutes to Miami, 30 minutes to Palm Beach. And when you get here, you have everything that you want to access, even the river. You jump on the taxi and head all the way down to the beach, or even the convention center by the river.
Meet us halfway.
Meet us halfway. And so all of this has transformed Fort Lauderdale. Again, not only us, from going from the middle child, but the entire Fort Lauderdale is now the center of attention. And of course, what's happening with real estate. When this museum was built in 1986 at this end of Las Olas, there was nothing here. And it was built specifically to be a catalyst for what is essentially the dead end part of Las Olas. Okay? Look at it now.
Around, the cranes, the exciting projects.
Every block is amazing.
Even the past 3 years alone, it's
tremendous.
Incredible.
And last night I was with some young collectors, and they told me that they had just moved here from New York, and I asked why, and they said the weather.
Of course.
They were getting tired.
As we approach winter season.
Winter. They wanted also the freedom that they felt that they had here. They said, and now they knew that they weren't giving up the culture that they loved so much in New York.
Yes.
It was anything they wanted was here.
So Bonnie, we know that this Saturday there's an exciting launch of a new program called the One East Society.
Yeah.
And I mean, the name alone is so catchy.
Oh, good. I tried it out. So I was, and you're a member of it now.
Yes.
That's great.
I can't wait to be here on Saturday with my team.
Oh, good. Well,
so can you tell us a little bit more about One East Society and why you felt the need for the One East Society?
Well, what we're seeing here in downtown Fort Lauderdale is a strong influx of young professionals, and they're coming from all over. So in many cases, they don't really have roots here or family. So how do you connect? How do you make friends? How do you be stimulated? How do you network? I mean, there's different groups there, that one can belong to, but the great thing about an art museum is that you can connect with people from all different walks of life, all different kinds of careers, and we want to be the place where this young generation feels is their home. It's a place, it's their center. And we love it, and the fact that it's, again, playing off our location, that unlike other cultural groups in Miami or Palm Beach, we're uniquely positioned to make it possible to connect the young professionals here with those in Miami and those in Palm Beach. Meet us halfway. Meet us right here in Fort Lauderdale. Although we'll do events in Miami and Palm Beach too. And it's just to get people this idea of get out of your zip code, explore. There's so much here. And with the Brightline, it's only 30 minutes to Miami, 30 minutes to Palm Beach.
Exactly.
Yep.
So you did mention Art Basel, of course.
Yes.
We all know Art Basel. What is the museum doing during that time of the celebrations?
Yes. Well, I have been a part of Art Basel since the beginning. 2001, the year it was supposed to happen, but didn't because of world events, 9/11.
Yeah.
But it was still an exciting. The VIPs still came, the artists still did their events, the museums still did their events, and it was the year the collectors all opened up their homes and embraced the international art world. My previous museum at MoCA, we really did make it the center of that celebration. And what I found when Art Basel announced that they were coming, everyone was like, yay, Art Basel's coming. And then people would take me aside and say, what's an Art Basel? So I realized that there was a lot of educating that needed to be done.
Yeah,
and so I realized that we could do that through our members. Plus, it was a big draw for attracting members. So I started putting together an Art Basel package for all different levels, including at our very highest level, private or intimate tour with me of Art Basel. That's where I lost my voice. It was in 2002 with the first Art Basel tour. Never got it back. So that is really popular. We do things with what will be for the One East Society. There's all these other young fairs, and it's a great way to get an introduction to new art, and in most cases, much more affordable.
Yes,
they'll be surprised that, you can do it on
Start your
budget.
collection. Yeah.
Yes, and so I brought that same concept up here. And it immediately caught on. One of the big advantages at one of our upper level memberships is that we provide a bus from the museum to go down to the convention center.
Oh, really?
And free passes to Art Basel. So you don't have to drive.
That's fantastic.
You don't have to park, which is the biggest issue people have. Traffic, who cares? You're with a bunch of people, you're partying back and forth. And then you bypass the ticket line.
That's great.
And have a free pass to go into Art Basel.
That's really great.
And so that's very popular.
Yes.
And then we have for the young groups, we also have a group called the Cobra Circle, which is a more established, we actually started right away when I arrived 5 years ago, and it's for the next generation of leaders. So these are people who have already shown that they're engaged with community, that they believe in the arts, they want to make it happen, and they want to learn for themselves. So we've got private collections. Many of them have started to collect themselves. We've gone on, we do a trip to New York for the Frieze Art Fair, which is again more of a younger fair, and we do other cool events.
It's really
as
connecting.
Well. Again, connecting, and what we'll see is the One East Society. By the way, the name One East Society is tied in with our address. We're One East Las Olas.
I love it.
So we like the idea that we can identify this group with this place.
Location.
Yeah. So the idea is that as the One East Society becomes more and more engaged, they will start graduating up to the Cobra Circle. And we're able to identify.
Introductory. So that's a great way for someone who's not sure how to get started.
Right.
That's a great way to.
And the kids, last night I was moderating a conversation with an artist from New York, and it was in Miami, and one of the women there was a collector. She said, my daughter used to drag us to your museum to every lecture when she was like 13, 14, 15, and we loved going there. And then she went off to study art history in New York, and the daughter was there last night, and she is now working in the arts field. So it's amazing. You do these things.
You don't
know
what
it's
it's
going to
do.
happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Bonnie, I know you're a busy woman. You have a gala you're planning for tomorrow, and the opening night for the next exhibit on Saturday, as well as the One East Society. So thank you so much for spending the afternoon with us.
It was my pleasure.